Hey everyone, this is David. Welcome back behind the velvet rope. Let's just get right into it today because we are joined by the one, the only Mr. Steve Wilkos.
How you doing?
I got to give you an appropriate introduction, Steve. Come on.
Yeah, I'd never get used to it, I guess.
How are you today? I mean, season 15 of the Steve Wilkos Show. Did you ever think we would be here?
It's funny. I never thought I'd have my own show, right? So once I did get my show, I knew in my heart that I was going to make it succeed no matter what. And obviously, there was a lot of people. When you hear Jerry Springer's Bodyguard is getting a TV show, not a lot of people had, were supporting it or backing it or thinking that it would last 15 years. But like I said, the lasting 15 years to me is not shocking. The fact that I got a TV show, that's the shocking part, because, you look at who's getting shows even today, like the last few have been Drew Barrymore, Nick Cannon, people, big names, I started out as a security guard on the Springer Show, so I was nobody. I wasn't a celebrity or anything. But the nice thing was back then, where TV was, you could grow on one show and build a fan base, and that's what happened with me. Even though I wasn't, per se anybody, people really got used to me. The show was very popular, so I did develop a fan base, and so it worked out. But still, it's nobody goes to work a part-time security job and ends up with their own TV show.
No, it does not happen. Well, I mean, look, born and raised in Chicago, you were in the Marine Corps, you were a Chicago PD. So, you were doing your job at the police department. How did you get that? Like, how did that call come in for, hey, Jerry Springer needs a bodyguard?
Well, it really was the Springer Show, when they felt like they needed security, they called Pinkerton, which would hire off-duty cops. One of the guys I knew that worked on my shift, who runs my security now, Mike McDermott, we were cops, 30 years ago, and he was working for Pinkerton. So they needed an extra guy one day. I happened to be the guy. And once I got my foot in the door, I really liked working there. And I knew, hey, this is good. It paid a lot of money. And so everything they asked me to do, I did it. And then, I kept getting more and more responsibilities with the show. And, when they had a show, I don't remember exactly the topic, but these two guys kept fighting all the time. And they said, just sit between them because these guys won't stop. So I sat between them. And that was kind of like my start. Like, okay, people, kind of recognize me. And then, I started getting more popular. And then the executive producer at the time said, hey, why don't you shave your head? And he goes, I'm going to make you very popular. And I said, hell, okay. And, I didn't have a lot of hair. I just came out of the Marine Corps. So my hair was really short anyways to begin with. So it wasn't that big of a leap, but it did make a big difference.
Did you have any reservations and, you were at the PD, like in working on Jerry, quote unquote, Jerry Springer?
Reservations about doing both?
Or just in joining the Jerry Springer Show,
I loved working on a Springer Show. Like, when I look back at my life, that's going to be one of the best times of my life. It was just a lot of fun. Working with Jerry was great. And, and I got to hire like 5 or 6 or 7 of my friends that worked for me on the Springer Show. So for me, it was like being in high school again. You're hanging out with your buddies. There was no rules. You're going around, just acting like a goofball. And that's what the Springer Show, there was no rules. There was no script. So even if the show was bad, we would just start acting stupid and come out of a show that way. So, and then, it obviously made my job easier on the streets of Chicago, because I'd pull somebody over and have my gun like stuck in their ribs, or, and then people like, hey, you're Steve. And, we'd go to domestic and people were fighting and they would stop fighting and they'd be like, hey, how's Jerry? Is he a nice guy? And so it really was not a time of my life, but it was being on the Springer Show made my life as a cop much easier.
Did people ask you, I mean, I guess for autographs, I don't know if we had the selfie at that point, but, did people ask you for autographs when you went to like?
Oh yeah, that was a huge thing, autographs. And nobody asks you for an autograph nowadays. I mean, very rarely. It's always selfies, like you said. but back then it was autographs. And I like to, I tell people, I used to get fan mail, actual fan mail. Now everything's email, but people, you would get letters, they'd start bringing them in boxes, and women would send me their pictures, old Polaroids and pictures. And, that's all obsolete in a very short amount of time, right? Like, it was kind of
Seriously.
cool opening all these physical letters and getting pictures of women. And like, nobody will ever experience that again because it's a different time in the world.
It's just all about the selfie now.
Yeah.
Well, Marine Corps, Chicago PD, these are some serious credentials. Did that prepare you for what was at Jerry Springer?
Yeah, because, being a policeman, it gave me the ability to talk to someone and get information from them. So truthfully, it's a great training ground for a talk show. So become a cop, and because, majority of your day is talking to people, people that call the police, or you see something on the street, and you're getting information from them. And you're also learning how to get something out of somebody without them knowing it, right? And that's a big part of what I do on my show, is getting people to reveal stuff that they really don't want to reveal. And, so the Marine Corps was just the work ethic, right? Like, when I got in the Marine Corps, I knew like I was going to be successful because like, there's a million people that are more talented than me, but nobody can outwork me. And that's a fact. Like, nobody's going to work harder than I do. And, and that's what you hear nowadays. Like, people get shows and like, oh, they showed up late, or they had the audience waiting 3 hours. And it's like, come on, man, that's not how you do it. Like, that's how the quickest way to get canceled. But being a policeman really set me up to be successful at my own show.
What about, what was the biggest, can you tell us like the most shocking thing you saw during your tenure when you were with Jerry Springer? Like a fun story from behind the scenes?
I could tell you, I could sit here all day and tell you stories, but this one, I've told the story before, and it was just because it's so shocking because it had nothing to do with the story. So there's two guys on stage fighting like for the millionth time, and they start ripping each other's shirts off. And when the one guy's shirt got ripped off, he had one female breast, right? Like, he's a normal guy, looks like me, but he's got this beautiful female breast. And, I was like, what the hell, and the segment ends, and I go backstage and I go up to the guy, I'm like, hey man, what's up with the female breast? And he goes, I was born that way. And I said, you didn't think to tell us about that? Or he goes, no, I didn't think it was a big deal. So it was just wild, because when the shirts got ripped off, the whole audience went crazy. It was like shocking, but it had nothing to do with the story.
I mean, it's like, if you're coming on the Jerry Springer show, you should expect maybe your shirt will be ripped off, right?
Yeah, and like I just said, like, that's such an unusual thing. And the Springer show was all the freakiest and craziest stuff. Like, yeah, we want to know if you have something odd like that.
Is it hard to be like a security for someone famous? Like, if you're not on a show, like Beyonce, like if someone has like personal security like that, is that like because I know there's a lot of cops that go into positions like that.
It's funny because before, like, my popularity became, well known. I traveled with Jerry and I went with them, and I never had a problem. Like, nobody ever like got out of line with Jerry. I never had to like throw somebody down or anything like that. But I worked with some cops, and they worked with some pretty big names, and it was just shocking. Like I can't say enough nice things about Jerry. Like, he was the most generous guy in the world. At Christmas, the presents he gave everybody at our show, our staff. But even just traveling with them, we always ate at the nicest restaurants, and we'd go to ball games, whatever city we're. And Jerry always paid for everything. He was a very generous guy. He was awesome to hang around. And then I worked with a lot of cops that worked with some really big names in the sports and entertainment world, and they would tell these shocking stories that this person's rude and not nice and cheap. Like, one guy who's, I'm not going to say his name, but he's one of the biggest sports names in the world, billionaire. And they said the guy couldn't be any cheaper. Like, he would never buy anybody anything, not dinner, not a round of drinks, nothing. And to me, I'm always like shocked by that, you know?
And you don't want to share his name here today behind the velvet rope, Steve?